We are live on thehannibaltv.com with a special edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast, a bit of a deviation, if you will, in so much as I am pleased to welcome today a man who is a researcher, an author, and an otherwise luminary in the true crime and occult fields. The man who has just authored this book, The Smiley Face Killers, Investigating Suspicious Water Deaths of College-Age Men in the U.S. and around the world, Mr. William Ramsey. Bill, thanks for coming on today.
Jack, thanks for the invite. Great to be here.
This phenomenon is one that's been around for a number of years, but seems to be getting additional traction and even into subgenres, which we'll discuss, recently covered by the Canadian Broadcast Corporation in their mainstream Fifth Estate program. But before we delve specifically into the Smiley Face Killer phenomenon, can you talk about your just to give the viewers a baseline of the work that you've done in investigations and the true crime occult genre?
Yeah, I've written 5 books. I've done 5 documentaries. My first book, Prophet of Evil. Then I wrote Abomination, Children of the Beast, Global Death Cult, which is back in the news. And then this is my most recent book, is The Smiley Face Killers. But I've done 2 documentaries on the same subject. So I try, because, like you said, so many things have happened in the last year and a half. I really always wanted to put together a book so people could have all just a corpus that contained all my research. So that's the reason why I wrote the book. But yeah, a lot of stuff has happened in really Chicago, Austin, Toronto. It's pretty remarkable.
Just out of curiosity, what given the fact that you've done work on Crowley and other topics, including the case in Arkansas, etc., what first drew you to the Smiley Face Killers?
Well, it came out of my research into Crowley, kind of Crowley's followers. So the Children of the Beast was that. And while I was doing that research, I kept seeing this symbol of the smiley face. And I remembered in the back of my mind that there was this phenomenon. I heard a coast-to-coast radio with Ian Punnett about the subject, and I just had forgotten. And I was like, wonder if this symbol has some kind of association with these murders. So that's kind of where the research started. I started researching on Facebook. There's a couple Smiley Face Killers groups there. And that's kind of where it started. And then I followed some of the cases. Like, I think the first case I followed was a guy by the name of Joey LaBute in Columbus, Ohio. And I had heard, I'd read all the other stuff. I read Gilbertson and Gannon's case studies in forensic drownings. But once I saw that Joey LaBute disappeared, I said, if this guy's found in water, I'm going to freak out. He was found in water in the Scioto River 19 days later. So that's really where I saw the disappearance, the phenomenon from the disappearance to a body found. And really, unfortunately, that was the first of like many 10 or 20 cases that I followed from disappearance to being found in water. But yeah, so it kind of came out of my Crowley occult research, because there's something about these cases that has that component to it. There's something mysterious. These are all cases that happen at night. People are at bars and disappear. And later, oftentimes in places that are searched, like the place where Joey LaBute was found had been searched. There were massive searches. And some of these are just incredible, like the full scale of state and federal authorities go looking for these guys and they still can't find them, and then the body pops up. So that's really how and once it kind of clicked, then I found the other kind of researchers. There were other independent things. People call this phenomenon different things around the country, whether you're in Boston or Manchester, UK, they call it the Manchester Pusher. Now that it's happened in Austin, they call it the Rainy Street Ripper. So this kind of phenomenon is happening in mostly urban areas all around the world, as far as I know.
What if you could delineate it down? What is the base, or perhaps the most prominent base theory about what is going on here in terms of the similarities of the case forensically and some of the other details that appear to link these cases together?
Well, I think it's just the same kind of MO, right? So somebody disappears, maybe starts acting funny and then there's like the families say this is out of character. You get somebody that's separated from a friend. That often happens. But those are kind of like the same kind of fact pattern surrounding these cases happens over and over, but always at night. And these are not like recreational type of drownings or things. And no, sometimes they're not even tested if they drowned. They just find the body and say, misfortune or something like that. There's kind of a lack of public knowledge about some of the law enforcement work that's done on these cases. They keep their kind of information to themselves. But sometimes people have pried out autopsy reports and things like that from the police, and it's often very different than what the public understood or what the police was telling the public, or were telling the public, I should say. And two cases that come to mind, it's Patrick McNeil and Dakota James in Pittsburgh, PA. Once the families got the autopsy reports, it showed that they were tortured or had rope burns around their neck and things like that, which were never part of the public record.
In terms of the victim, and I understand that this has experienced a little bit of a deviation as of late in terms of some females being involved, but your typical victim here is a middle
college
class,
aged,
college age
middle class, middle class, if not lower class, maybe.
Okay, and the behavior appears to be exhibited while out at a bar or whatnot, and then they disappear, and it's all out of character. Is that something that's remained consistent across international lines too?
It seems like it. I mean, I think some people are clearly drinking and some are heavily drinking, but some of these victims are not drinkers at all. And so it's assumed that they were drinking or drinking heavily, which is false. But it's all the kind of same age group, but some are very noticeably acting strange, like they're clearly have been drugged. Like even Patrick McNeil, the first case, like he only had 2 drinks. The first case that I discussed in the book, he only had 2 drinks and then was like throwing up and crawling on the street and being followed. So it seems like he is targeted and drugged. But I think Gilbertson, again, and the original kind of 2 researchers in their book, they showed a lot of these men had elevated levels of GHB in their blood. So it seems to be a correlation of drugging. And it's really kind of lower level crisis all around the United States. A lot of people are being drugged in bars, maybe not for the smiley face killer's MO or purpose, but to be robbed or something like that. So
what would be the purpose or the intent of such a specific typology of victim? What would be the advantage to the killers aside from just basic bloodlust? You would seem opportunistic killers are different from pattern killers, spree killers, etc. But it's a very strange group, I would think, to target historically, given the fact that they're young, male, and would be able to defend themselves more than, say, a lone female.
Agreed. I think it's kind of strange. That's kind of one of the elements of this whole phenomenon that's odd. Like, why are they targeting these men? I came up there seems to be an over preponderance of the homosexual angle on a lot of these kind of cases. Not necessarily, which makes it even stranger. Like the motive doesn't even seem to be sexual in nature but a lot of these guys are on Grindr. They are homosexuals. They're in that community. So it seems like that's like why that they're targeted. But some of these other cases may just be like literal, like thrill kill or sport kill, like somebody's in the wrong place at the wrong time. But it is curious. And like, what's the motivation? Like some people like have surmised that it's groups, and Gannon and Gilbertson, or Gannon specifically, have said that there's a group of people who are interested in this type of crime. So I've looked into the Order of Nine Angles, and their whole worldview is very lethal, and you're supposed to select an opfer, right? A sacrificial victim. So that might be something. I don't have that. I've never tied anything between the ONA to any of these crimes, but the ideology would be the same as like a perpetrator of these crimes. Could because you're supposed to commit a crime in the ONA and get away with it. Like that's the whole purpose. So um it is strange. Like why is this happening? But it is the phenomenon itself is happening. It's a greater question of why. And I think the police a lot of times they're just trying to solve a crime and attach somebody to the crime, and maybe the motivation or the mens rea or whatever you want to call it isn't as important to them as basically shutting the case and this guy did this and then we're done. So I think that some of these criminals who may have been caught for other things are involved in this type of crime as well. So
what in terms of the modus operandi, I've read in your research and others that it appears that there's the what is suspected to be a drugging incident, etc., and then descriptions of the victims being followed and disappearing. What is the primary theory in terms of who are, is this a group phenomenon, and why is it replicating itself across the country, cities, and international boundaries now?
it's a great question. I mean, I think that's it. Like there's somebody learned this kind of MO and it got shared through the underground or through the dark web. And maybe that it's a group of people with a similar outlook, and that's why you're seeing it happen cross borders, even across continents. So it may be an underground thing. People are in some BDSM kind of a group or something, and this is how you do it. This is you're trying to find this victim. So I mean, if you look like across, like people have taken the body mass index of all of the victims, they're all like healthy, athletic, maybe better looking men. They're not like overweight or almost don't even see anybody with like even a bit of overweight. So maybe this is like a specific body type or something that these people are wanting to abduct. So I think that it is a question. I mean, is it one group or is it individuals? Obviously not one individual. But is there a concerted group? Well, there are interest groups of all different times, and some aren't as nice as others. I mean, there's a lot of people who smoke pot, so they go join whatever High Times or they get magazines. Well, what if you are this type? Like they have pedophile Telegram channels or whatever, secret channels like that, or do stuff. So maybe that there's these types of people who are this is their either overtly gay or they may have a secret life and this is what they're interested in. So it could be that. I don't know. I don't have those that kind of, you can speculate. And I have a whole section in my book on offender typology, the people who've been caught conducting similar type of crimes, so you can go all the way to the family in Australia. There was a guy in Perth who was outwardly married. He was married and a heterosexual, but at night he would go out and drug men and rape them. So that could be one like that. There's other guys like Stephen Port in London, Mark Latunsky in Michigan. So I think that and Mark Latunsky is a really interesting case because he was part of kind of an online underground group that called themselves werewolves. They were like, that was his nickname. So he had a regular name and he had a couple fake pseudonyms, and one was like Olikos, which is a werewolf. So that's how, and he had a huge werewolf bat, very strange guy. I think he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but I feel like he got caught for killing a guy by the name of Kevin Bacon in Michigan. But my sense of him is that wasn't his first victim. Like I believe that he was probably killing people for a long time.
That was the individual that had the torture room, which I believe you and others have speculated in terms of the victims being there being a period of time where victims are being taken, held in an unknown location, bodies of water being searched, and then boom, the body's back again 2 days or 2 weeks later or some time frame like that. Do you think that's probably and mixing in with the whole torture aspect of it? Do you think that is one commonality that the groups share?
It seems like it. Like a lot of these, some of the studies on some of these cases, these people are missing for 7 days, but they can tell that some of their death only happened a day ago. So they're being kept somewhere. A lot of them are, as far as I can tell. So I think that's an element of the crime is the abduction and keeping these men alive for whatever purpose.
Can you talk a bit on the topic of what appears to be whatever terminology you want to put on it, but a satanic or occult correlation to these groups and some of the evidence that points to that? We're seeing, as I touched on earlier, a bit of a mainstream recognition of some of the groups, like you touched on earlier, but the 764, the online abuse, exploitive.
Yeah, it's a pedophile cult. It's literally a weird like that's another example of like that's their interest, right? They're pedophiles and call themselves a cult. Well, what if there's another cult, but they like men, right? Or they like younger men or whatever.
Is that something that law enforcement? Two things with the law enforcement perspective. From what I understand, and you mentioned it, they want to wrap up a case in some aspects, but then under the guise of not creating hysteria, they're underplaying this aspect that this is a group or organized phenomenon, and may not recognize the role that Satanism or whatever occult phenomenon plays in it. Do you see that as one of the, in addition to interjurisdictional problems, sharing of information that is occurs? Do you see
It's
their
endemic, right? It's endemic in law enforcement.
absolutely? Do you see their reluctance to embrace it? This may not just be another random killing as a problem to getting to the bottom of this.
Yeah, it's a real problem. Like the police chief from Boston came out and made a public statement after a few bodies were found there and say we can't find any connection. He's trying to calm the public, but there's so many cases in Boston, 20 cases at least. So the people in Boston seem to know. He's clearly downplaying it, and so I think that is a problem. I think law enforcement's passivity, and also I think that the interest of law enforcement, you can talk to people in law enforcement. Like I'm not in law enforcement, but you can talk to them. And the real issue is having open and shut cases. You want it cleaned, you want it off the books. So to say this guy accidentally drowned is advantageous to them and the perpetrator. So the perpetrators know that as well. That, okay, Joe was out late and slipped and fell in water. He suddenly couldn't get out. He could make it to the water, but he drowned. And, then they get away with the crime and could continue to commit crimes. So,
do you think it's key for the families of these victims to, as some have, which you can highlight, to say no, this is not this. My child was not, a heavy drinker. He did not just fall into the Potomac, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that's key in terms of putting the pressure on jurisdictions to look a little deeper aside from the obvious to close the file?
absolutely. I think the family involvement has brought to light so much information for me as kind of like a writer researcher, because if some of these families didn't or harangue the police and try to get more information or say it, a lot of these cases would be just called accidental drownings. Because and then if you read my book or even read my documentaries, I focus on the families, and they just go, there's no way. Like some of these families, like Dakota James swam, he was the captain of his high school swim team, and they say he didn't drink more than 2 drinks a night. Like he wasn't a heavy drinker. So the family knew something was wrong. So they said it, and they found out like through finding the autopsy report that he met with misadventure. It was definitely not. So these are crucial. So if you're a family, you have to kind of keep the investigation alive, because some of the police won't do it. I mean, you pay your tax dollars for the police to do it, but they won't do it. So in a lot of ways, I do. It goes back like this is a perplexing and almost, if you're a perpetrator, a perfect crime, because all of the elements of this crime, they're to the advantage of a perp because water washes away some evidence. It makes it look like it's a water drowning, confuses the police. The police incentives are to close it. Maybe the family doesn't see anything. People don't see them go. None of these cases, nobody's seen these people go into the water, which is super telling. That's a huge tell. Like the ones that you can take out of the pool of victims are the ones that like, hey, it's 1 a.m. I'm going to go for a swim. So that's obviously not a victim. But none of these cases, everybody's seen go into the water. So I think that the family, to answer your question, the family involvement, if they think that this is one of those types of cases, it's crucial for them to be involved forever. And it never leaves them. I mean, the families are wrecked, and they're generally not very happy with the police or law enforcement coverage of these cases. I mean, that's what I found.
This channel, the Hannibal TV, is a Canadian channel, and I wanted to ask you about cases in Canada that you've come across. I know there were some in Toronto and Vancouver, but just a little bit of a history of when these suspected cases started popping up here, and is there an epicenter in this country?
Well, definitely Toronto and Vancouver. There were like 3 cases in Vancouver in a month, like in 2023, I think. And it was interesting too because the phenomenon's kind of changed. Whereas it was once seen as kind of like a white young college age. Now there's a lot of victims who are African American and from India or South Asia, I guess you could call it, and Asians too. But like these cases that popped up in Vancouver were incredible. It's Urshad Iqbal. He was found in False Creek, Vancouver, May 19th, 2023. Then he was missing for 3 weeks. Then Suleiman Kewar, missing found in False Creek again 1 week later, like it's right in front of your face. And then another man in Science World Building in False Creek, 26-year-old. So that's 3 back to back were in Vancouver alone. And then the ones that were in Toronto, there were 2 Indian South Asian, I guess is probably the more accurate thing. They were in Toronto. What's those? I forgot those cases. Oh, there. Let me see if I can find them. It was it AJ Saw? No. There were just there were a couple other ones that I'll have to find their names. But yeah, they were in Toronto back to back. There were 2. So it's definitely happening. It's definitely kind of expanded out. There's Canadian cases. There's actually an interesting, like Canadian is there's a lot of indigenous people, kids and stuff that have been found in water in Thunder Bay. And that's kind of also kind of telling. So somebody's disposing bodies that way, but instead of like college age, middle age men, it's that. I mean, I try to put that in the addendum or index to my book, and I should have. But there's all kinds of weird things, like the last 4 victims of John Wayne Gacy. They were all thrown in water outside of Chicago, and there was just like a huge rampage in Chicago. So it's really something else. Let me see if I can find those Toronto cases.
While you're doing that, I just wanted to get your opinion on there clearly is a correlation between these cases with similar modus operandi, which would speak to, and correct me if I'm wrong, the first sort of suspected cases of these were in the late 90s, which coincided with the growth of the internet. So we know about the dark web and child abuse exploitation material. It would speak to this being almost like instructional material out there. So given the fact that law enforcement has had success with, busting pedophile rings, dark web sites, et cetera, I'm just curious why they haven't come across something more substantive than a theory by reviewing the dark web and doing the investigative work there that they do.
It's a good question. I mean, it's not the kind of proactive thing that you should be doing. The three in Toronto were Harsh Patel, Ayush Dakra, and Vishay Patel. So
Mm.
they were, that was,
East.
let me see when those were. I think those were 2023 cases. Yeah. Those
Mm.
were May 2023.
Mm.
So those are the kind of the South Asian tradition targeting those types. And there was actually kind of Bruce MacArthur in Toronto too. He
Yes.
was a gay guy, and he would bury his bodies in like he was a landscaper, so he'd bury him in like plant, huge ceramic planters and stuff like that.
Mm. Mm.
But yeah, this kind of mo negates the need to like find a body disposal. You just go throw it in a river. But as far as the police, yeah, you kind of wonder. I mean, I've seen when Dakota James's mom was like talking to the attorney for Pittsburgh. She went in his office, and in the office, she said were with him were somebody from the Secret Service and the FBI. So why they're involved in that or investigating Dakota James's case is very interesting, and I don't have an answer for that. But yeah, I think the police. I've talked to a lot of different people. People have talked to me, and a common theme is like the desire to keep the public from panicking.
Mm.
So I think that that's really an interesting aspect of these cases. There's so much money involved. So if Boston says they have a problem with serial killers killing young men in their city, that whole college, I mean, if they lose 10% of their revenues from these colleges that are there, it's in the billions of dollars. So it's somebody said it was like the guys from Jaws, right? We got to keep the panic down. We can't let this impact business. So I think that that's an aspect of it, sadly, is that, and also people haven't really seen the ties between how many cases. Like I put the 375 in this book. It's off the charts. Like it's a huge number of people over the last 20 years, 25 years. So I think that that's another thing. It's like people have written this off, and actually I read it off as an urban myth. I thought it was an urban myth when I heard about it. I never had any evidence to the contrary. And then I really started researching it and saw it. I mean, I've unfortunately been looking into this stuff almost 10 years. Like it's been 8 years. So I know these cases. I know a lot of the other researchers, which I've included in this book. But I think that's a problem. Law enforcement, and a lot of this, like if it's a new type of crime too. So maybe they're not as forceful on this kind of new, like maybe bank robberies and things like that are very easy for them to look into, or they're used to murders, but not this type of MO. So that may be the case. And you do see the cops bungling some of these other cases. Like there was a huge inquest about Stephen Port and why they didn't figure out and should have seen through his ruses, like Stephen Port's ruses of dumping like the same bodies in the same church cemetery down the street. Why didn't the police see into that? And I think the inquest is still ongoing, and I think he killed those people like 5 years ago. So there could be something like this if all these families got together and covered, like became a group of like, hey, this happened to us. And they've had a few families, like 5 of the family members on Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil, I think a couple years ago, 3 years ago. So there's been some kind of glimmer, and you said there was something in Canada too, right? That the state did a show on this.
Yes, yeah, just recently. I mean, it was in connection with the 764, which.
Right. No, I saw the 764 one.
Yeah, they've touched on briefly the phenomenon, but nothing in any sort of detail. Do you know if the FBI in the States with Quantico and profiling and all that, research and expertise at their disposal, if they're looking at this phenomenon at all?
I have no idea. Like I just said, like the FBI was involved in Dakota James's case, but I don't know if they're looking into this. And that's kind of another thing. Like, why aren't you on top of these cases? Like, these are incredible. Like, they're still happening. There was just a total rampage in Chicago. Like, it was off the charts. Like, how many people died in 2023? Noah Enos, Carlos Arce, Richard Garcia, Seamus Gray, Joel Orduno, Christoph Zubert, Peter Salvino, a couple, which was very strange, Daniel Sotelo and Natalie Brookson, J.J. Delaney Day. That involved Crump or Crum, I forgot his name, but he's kind of African American activist. Raby Contain, Inaki Baskaran, and Jeremy Switek. Those are all within 2 years. All found guilty.
And it's really ramped up after a bit of a pause with the pandemic, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
A fan wanted to know the significance of the smiley face symbol itself in connection with these crimes.
Well, the reason that this whole phenomenon got its name, smiley face killers, is both Gannon and Gilbertson tied the symbol to certain cases independently of each other in two different states, New York and I think Minnesota. So that's how it got its name. And they have, like in their book, you can see the smiley face. They believe that there's tagging taking place where the bodies are put into water. So not where they're found, but like here's the water and this is the smiley face as a marker. But they say that there's other symbols and things like that. I don't think they've ever disclosed them. But yeah, that's how it got its name. And the smiley face, there's an overlap between these killers and then smiley face in larger culture because it's been used, I think, going back to William Burroughs. But it goes through acid house music, kind of alternate kind of stuff. Alan Moore uses it in Watchmen. It's in Fight Club. It's a theme within Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club book. And it's kind of just popping up in people are wearing it as fashion items. So it's all over like Ed Sheeran's Bad Habits video. So it has an occult meaning. And I am not initiated, but it seems like, and it's affiliated, people have seen it affiliated with 098 too. But what it seems to mean is you kind of laugh through tragedy. So it's almost like it's a tragedy, but you enjoy inflicting this tragedy. It seems to be that's what I think its esoteric meaning is. Not its exoteric, which is just a happy face.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the challenges that you experienced doing your research into this phenomenon, what jumps out at you? Is it the aspect of dealing with law enforcement or just putting the pieces together?
Well, I mean, there's other people researching these too. Like Jim Smith was my primary researcher for my first documentary, and so he's covering the cases and contacting a lot of people. So that was kind of an easier way. I mean, law enforcement isn't helping. So this is kind of like something you can just follow. And people send me cases. Like I didn't know about Ed Sheeran and his whole 09A ideology connections until somebody sent me something and say, hey, you got to check out this video. So in a way, it's kind of like a group effort. Like it's been a group effort. But one of the things about these cases is they're covered in the media. So you could, if I got a name from 99, because of the internet, you can go back and watch all the stuff. So you can watch the news coverage. So cases that I've missed, a lot of them are covered in nightly news. Like, hey, we're missing, so-and-so. So it's easier to kind of if they fit the profile. Like there's a lot of, sifting and letting the chaff. Like there's cases where people drowned. There's cases where people, are clearly like they clearly fell off a boat or something like that. So those are not these cases. These are the cases where somebody literally disappears and are later found in water.
Mm-hmm. Moving forward, what do you think will be crucial to having some kind of resolution, if you will, of this phenomenon? Two-part question, that being one. B being, is there any awareness going out? Again, traditionally, you were speaking of some high-risk groups being targets. Is there any sort of awareness happening at the community level to be careful? And how do you think they're going to solve some of these? Because I think if they solve some of them, traditionally somebody gets caught, they start talking, which is another reason I'm having a hard time understanding why they haven't had more expansive success law enforcement wise.
Right. Well, I think that these latest cases in Austin and Chicago have really lit a fire in those localities. Like people there now know that this phenomenon exists. I've talked to people in Austin; they never even heard of the smiley face killers. They had no clue. But then it happened there, and they were like, "Oh, we just had a bunch of drownings." And I'm like, "Guys, this is happening all over the place." They didn't know, so they don't cover it. And especially, you can see from the reporting that even the reporters don't you cover it in the larger contexts. But because of social media, I think like a lot of these, there was a researcher in Chicago had millions of views on his posts about the Chicago deaths. So I think the awareness is growing, and shows like this and me talking about it and other people talking about it, I think is growing. But I think that law enforcement, if like people in law enforcement believe that there's people perpetrating these crimes, hopefully when they arrest somebody, they'll ask them questions about where they've been, what they do, have they done it before, do you know people are doing it, what are you doing online, what groups are you in, what's your social media. They had a case, like I have a whole chapter in my new book about this man rescued from water in TD Garden, where there had been other cases. So if somebody in Boston had known two other guys, Kelleher and Hurley, had been abducted from TD Garden, they might have said, "Hey, might be a pattern." And the guy's name I think was Josh, the young man, fit the profile of the smiley face victim. But there were pictures when he was rescued. There was a picture of him with a man that nobody knew how he got there. So there's this victim who had been submerged in water for 5 minutes face down. Somebody's holding him. He gets rescued. The police show up. The public shows up. And this guy who rescued him disappears and nobody asks him any questions. They don't know his name. They have a picture. They've never done any follow up. Like, what are you doing there? And Josh had like a huge bruise. Like part of his ear came off. Like somebody had to have come up behind him and hit him with something really hard. And it's just like, dude, you could have broken up all the cases in Boston. That might be the guy who's been doing it for 10 years or 20 years. You don't know his weird motivations. Maybe he is an occultist. That's the whole thing about the occult is like, it's all kinds of, their motivations for doing things aren't your standard motivation. So that's just one example of something slipping through the fingers of the police. Like there may have been other cases. Stephen Port, going back to London, is a perfect example because they didn't even look at the CCTV video for him and for the people who they found in that church, the kids. And I think there's been payouts. I actually think now that London, I think it was Barking was the name of the city outside of London, has paid out the families. What happened is one of the family members said, "I want the CCTV video of my loved one, where he was last seen in Barking. Give it to me. I'll analyze it." So the police didn't analyze it. So they gave it to the family. I think they had to go to court. Gave it to the family. The family's watching. It said, "Who's the guy with my brother?" Like they didn't even. The police never even got to that. Like, you're paying taxes for this. And it's the same thing in TD Garden. Like, what are you guys doing? So I think that it's it's the passivity of the police. I think it's pretty sad. But yeah, they're going to break. You're going to get somebody who's listened to, like, read my book or listened to one of my podcasts or something, and they're going to go, "There's more to these stories, and these guys are connected. I want to know who this." They're going to ask the right questions, and they're not asking the right questions now. Not even close.
Sad. Wanted to before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you about work that you're doing currently and your thoughts on this, as you characterized quite correctly, the pedophile cult, the 764 phenomenon, and just how big that is in the United States and Canada. And I think part of the reason it aside from the very dark web nature of it, etc., part of the reason is it's so horrific, especially involving children, that the layperson in the public doesn't want to hear about this. But could you talk a bit about how huge a problem this is and what's being done to protect kids?
I'm not sure a lot is being done to protect kids, but the 764 was something that came up after I published Global Death Cult about the Order of Nine Angles in May of 2021, and I honestly had not heard of 764. I'd heard of other kind of groups that are affiliates of O9A, Fewer Creek, Sonnenkrieg, different divisions and things like that globally, and what they would call a Nexian. But had not heard 6'4". So in the last couple of years, these groups have taken off, and there's been all kinds of. These are just the ones who got arrested, but there were things involved: Kyle Spitz, Richard Densmore, Angel Almeida, Luca Benincasa, Bradley Cadenhead, Chandler Pong, Kalana Limkin, Caleb Merritt. These are Matthew Ballinger. These are all people who are in like a pedophile cult. They're an online pedophile cult that finds vulnerable women or young girls and does horrible things. Like the Richard Densmore complaint was like Silence of the Lambs level of horror show, like carving, scarification and things like that. Like he was a monster. And so parents have to really be careful about what their kids are doing online and who they're talking to. And the sad thing is that, like, there was the one case you mentioned, this thing of the CB, the Canadian Broadcasting Company, was it Fifth Estate did something. This girl, like, she was living with her great grandma or something. Like, she didn't even have a mom or a dad around. So somebody must have, the guy who committed the crime, his name was Caleb Merritt. He just found somebody there. So it's, the society, we're in real trouble, man. Society is going down. So I don't know if the government, at least they're putting out these things. The FBI, to its credit, last year put out a warning about this whole phenomenon. So it is happening. And people, I had this on the show. I had Ken Silva from Headline USA and another advocate, child advocate BX. So, it's going around. We actually got, I did the research with them, and we ended up on the radar of a lot of very interesting people and on 4chan. So people kind of put it out there. But, people said that there was one really interesting comment, which is just completely preposterous, is that we were blowing it out of proportion. We're like, this is all in the public record. You can look these guys' names up, just like the Smiley Face Killer victim. You can find the story. And these are, some of these guys have like 20 victims. So they're like repeat sexual abusers. It's not just one victim. So do the numbers. It's off the charts. There was one guy, Bradley Cadenhead. His mother said all he did on his whole day, he didn't work. He just spent all his time online on the computer terrorizing people, little kids. That's all he did. That was his job. And so they would get this. They call it CSAM as a new acronym. It's child sexual exploitation and abuse material. They get it and then share it with each other, like on a pedophile group or something on Telegram or one of these so-called encrypted things. So it's really ugly, nasty, and that's actually a time. I mean, this is something that was happened when I was studying the on Order of Nine Angles before 2021 when I published my first book. So there were elements. These guys were Nazis, but they were also into underage, child porn and stuff like that. Really nasty stuff, whether they were committing it or they had it in their possession. Mm-hmm. So this kind of nihilism and a value, empty value system that has within a generation has spawned this. It's really incredible.
What do you think it's going to take for big tech to be somewhat held accountable for things like age verification on all these? Because correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of these kids they're not scooped up on the dark web or whatever. They're on TikTok, they're on Snapchat, they're on what have you, X, whatever. What
they're brought over. So like Caleb Merritt's case, that girl, he met her on, I think, TikTok. He said, let's go over here. Then we can talk here. And then the abuse started. So I think a lot of these guys are guilty. They just had a hearing in Congress and they subpoenaed Zuckerberg and some of these other characters. Zuckerberg, as far as my opinion, he's a facilitator of child rape and abuse and child porn. Like, it's rife and endemic in his properties, and he claims he doesn't even know. So these people who've been abused and like the kids have had these pictures taken, they're being shared on Facebook and Instagram. It's incredible, with no civil or criminal penalties. Like, what is the government doing? They have so much money and so many resources The Department of Homeland Security has 260,000 employees, and they don't do squat. Mayorkas is our first impeachment here, or second impeachment of a sitting member of a cabinet in the U.S. history. Like, he is a complete clown and a loser. He shouldn't even be there. So you're just like the point of a lot of these. I mean, that's the FBI. Like, it's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They should be doing my investigation. This should have been my book on the smiley face killers should have been written by the FBI with their money and resources. I'm just like a guy with an internet connection. That's it. Like, they should be doing all this stuff. So I think that the law enforcement in certain parts, I'm not really a super critic, like all the law enforcement is bad. But I think that was the kind of need of why I wrote these books, is like, at that time they weren't really doing anything, but now the ONA is kind of, it's become these are real world events. They're coming off of the internet into the real world. But I think that the law enforcement and the government they can do it. They have so many resources. Like, I could get online and say, literally, the vote was stolen in 2020 and get kicked off, but they can't stop this. Because the reason why? Because it's a huge operation to get blackmail and put people under their thumb. They want to control them. They want to know who the pedophiles are, and so they can control them. Just like Epstein and all that other stuff. Well, that's really what I think.
It seems to me that unless there's, parents, I feel for parents of young children, and I'm glad I'm old myself and I didn't have to deal with that growing up as a Gen Xer, but seems to me that parents can only do so much to protect their children, and unless there's some systemic controls and safeguards on these platforms, the abuse is only going to continue.
I don't even think it's hard. Like, they have AI stuff that's able to ascertain if somebody has a non-conforming dissenting opinion about the shot or the elections or certain things. They can find it right away and go gone. Like, they've done it to me on YouTube, but then they claim, yeah, we're unable to stop the abuse. Give me a break. Give me a break. They have to really change the legislation so that these tech companies are in conformance with law. So, like, you cannot break the law on this. So that means you cannot have this CSAM stuff on there. You cannot have groups that promote illegal things. You have to report this stuff to the authorities right away, and who they are and what this person is. Like, there should be active reporting things for these companies to operate. This whole 230 thing, I think it gave them the ability to just like, hey, we're not liable for anything that happens on this site. We don't have to do SWAT. No, I don't agree with that. I think that they should take an active thing, or just let some other. I mean, Twitter had all these guys from the government in there, but they were there just monitoring things they didn't really want to hear. Nothing illegal. Twitter, before, my understanding is Twitter was just as bad as Facebook as far as CSAM before the change, before Elon Musk bought it, and they didn't do anything about it. It wasn't part of their issue. So I think these guys, some of these tech guys, that you kind of wonder, like, what are your real interests? Like, are you for this, like, abuse stuff? So it's bad. It's really but like these phenomena, 09A, smiley face killers, these are things that didn't exist 10, 20 years ago. So, it's just awareness and public awareness has to catch up, and the public really does force changes in laws and focus and stuff like that. So I think hopefully, like, shows like this, like, that's kind of like my education. Like, I'm trying to educate people about it, so they'll know and they'll go, well, what the heck is this? Is my son on these? Like, what's he doing with the Hannibal?
The challenge will be, I think, for the public, again, this is such I have a criminal justice background, so this stuff is not new to me, but it's so dark and so evil that a lot of people just want to go, no, I don't want to deal with this, but we're going to have to if we're going to prevent victimization moving forward through public pressure and political change.
No question. The culture, like this kind of culture of talking about it and then recognizing the problem, is the beginning. It's like the seeding process that'll make it change. Because then people will see it like, why didn't you guys see this? I knew that this group existed. You guys are playing dumb 764. That what are we paying you millions and billions of dollars to do? This is your job. You should be doing that. You should be setting out these public awareness pieces and things. I mean, the FBI, to their credit, did that last year as far as 764 Colt and all these offshoots and stuff like that.
Well, Bill, in terms of your work, very important stuff. Can you tell the viewers of the Hannibal TV not only where they can pick up this excellent book on the smiley face killers, but all of your works, as well as you have a great podcast I follow and several other venues to get your information out. If you could let the folks know now, please.
Yeah, all my books are available on Amazon. You could buy signed copies from my website, William Ramsey Investigates, and then my podcast, where I cover a lot of these topics. I've tried to cover things that people aren't covering. Is William Ramsey Investigates, and it's in the top 0.5% in the world. So like top 15,000 podcasts. And I signed with Spotify 2 years ago. So that's been working out, and censorship free. It's been nice being hosted in some other country with better freedom of speech, laws than we have here, or at least in the States, it seems like. So that's basically it. Yeah. And I have a website. Like I said, I have a Patreon, William Ramsey Investigates. You can listen to my shows ad-free. I'm on Twitter. I post a lot of stuff there. I haven't been censored yet, as far as I know. But yeah, that's basically it.
Well, I want to, again, thank you for your time and encourage the viewers of the Hannibal TV to check out your work. And we'll definitely keep in touch because I'm sure, unfortunately, you're not done producing books, documentaries, etc. on these phenomenon.
I just keep discovering more. I'm gonna have to go back and rewrite Global Death Cult and add in all these other things. Like it's gonna go from thick to even and twice as much information. So it's unfortunate, but these things are happening. There was another case actually that I wrote about a Global Death Cult Canadian, which is about Lindsay Suvanarath, where she flew out to Halifax and tried to do a mass shooting like Columbine. So that was an interesting case. And one of the guys she was with did end up killing his parents, his dad. So very dark, but that is a Canadian connection.
Well, I appreciate your time. And again, we'll definitely stay in touch. And no doubt as developments occur in these cases and others, I'd love to have you back. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for the invite.
Well, fans, that's it for a special edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast. I want to thank you for viewing and catch you all later.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like